So you want to try Linux, but you keep hearing names like GNOME, KDE Plasma, and XFCE, and you're wondering what's the difference and which one should I choose? Welcome back to Mackie Tech, and when people talk about Linux desktops, the three most popular environments you'll hear are GNOME, KDE Plasma, and XFCE. That's hard to say. GNOME is by far the most widely adopted. KDE is the most customizable, and XFCE is probably the most lightweight. Of course, there are others like Cinnamon or Mate, but the first three cover most of Linux users' needs. So before we get too crazy, it's easy to confuse a desktop environment with a Linux distribution, or what they call distros. Think of a distro as sort of like a flavor of Linux. It's the whole package, like Ubuntu or Mint or Fedora. The desktop environment is sort of like a skin on top. It's what the desktop looks like, the icons, how the menus work, and which family of apps you start with, like the file manager or the web browsers. In this video, we'll be discussing the three environments, the three desktop environments that is, comparing their performance, their built-in apps, and customizations so you can decide which one works for your workflow. Now, desktop environments can vary depending on the Linux distribution you're using because each distro usually has its own flavors for themes and icons and apps. As an example, Fedora's version of GNOME looks a little different than Ubuntu's version of GNOME, even though they're built on the same GNOME desktop. So to keep our comparisons fair, we'll use Ubuntu's family and using virtual machines of Ubuntu for GNOME, for Kubuntu for KDE Plasma, and Xubuntu for XFCE. I will, of course, leave links in the video description for where to download each of these. And as for each VM, I'm going to have them with 4 gigabytes of RAM, 1 CPU core, and 50 gigabytes of storage. That way we're comparing apples to apples. So let's start with the look and feel and customization options for each desktop. Starting with Ubuntu, which comes bundled with GNOME and goes for a sleek, minimalistic aesthetic with fewer customization options. Kubuntu, which has the KDE Plasma, is the opposite, with highly customizable panels, widgets, different themes and effects you can tweak endlessly. It gives it a nice polished and flexible look. And lastly, you have Xubuntu XFCE, which keeps things very lightweight, classic, offering simple panels and theme changes without heavy visuals, making it very efficient while still letting you adjust the basics. If we look at performance, Xubuntu uses the lowest amount of resources between the three, taking up roughly 600 megabytes of RAM, using only 1 to 2% of the CPU at idle. Kubuntu, by contrast, takes a little over 1 gigabyte of RAM and 3.3% of the CPU at idle, which would suit more power users much better. And lastly, Ubuntu likes to strike a balance of performance and polish with CPU usage at 3.2% and utilizing around 750-60 megabytes of RAM. With respect to built-in apps, all three desktops ship with Firefox as their web browser, but that's kind of where the similarities end. Xubuntu generally ships with the image editor GIMP, which is generally lighter on resources, making it better for basic editing and running on older machines. In comparison, Krita, which ships in Kubuntu, is much more resource intensive, but that's probably because it's more like almost an Illustrator and designed for digital painting. Ubuntu doesn't ship with any image editor, but its default image viewer, Lupe, I guess, is very capable. For file managers like XFCE's Thunar, it's very basic, clean, no flash, lightweight, more user-friendly in my opinion if you're coming from Windows or Mac. Ubuntu's Nautilus is more robust, can integrate with Google Drive or Nextcloud via GNOME Virtual File System or GVFS, and Dolphin has more options for customization and even has a built-in terminal. Lastly, there's the media players like GNOME's Totem, which is simple and straightforward, designed for ease of use with minimal controls. KDE's Eliza, on the other hand, is more feature-rich, supporting music libraries, playlists, and a more polished interface. Parole on XFCE stays lightweight, offering just the basics for video and audio playback without taxing system resources. Other favorable mention for desktop environments are Mate, which carries on the classic GNOME 2 style, offering a traditional panel and menu desktop that's lightweight, stable, and familiar for users who prefer sort of an old school layout. Pantheon, on the other hand, is the more polished Mac-inspired desktop from Elementary OS, designed to be sleek and beginner-friendly, but with limited customization. Meanwhile, Bungie takes a more modern approach, blending GNOME technology with sort of a clean, streamlined interface that emphasizes simplicity without being too bare bones. So at the end of the day, each desktop environment shines in its own way. XFCE is the lightweight choice for speed, or if you have limited hardware or older hardware. KDE Plasma gives you endless customization and features, but it's going to take up more resources. And GNOME is going to play the balance of polish with simplicity. The best one way depends on your needs and workflow and your aesthetic preferences. And that's going to wrap it up today, folks. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit that like and subscribe to Mackie Tech for more Linux tips, home lab builds, Raspberry Pi stuff, and tutorials, as well as reviews, because I have a couple that are coming up that I think you're going to like. And make sure to check out these other videos here if you want to keep watching. I don't know why you wouldn't. And we'll be talking to you again very soon.